At last we come to the end of all things, or at least the end of this thing, and that is the Mecha Invasion Constructicons or Devastator Combiner. I don't even know what the combine mode of this thing is called, but whatever. If you are just coming into this now, this is a video that is only looking at the combine mode. The individual figure videos were uploaded previous to this, and I looked at them all in their pairs. So like Scrapper and Mixmaster together, Hook and Longhaul together, and Scavenger and Bone Crusher together, because they were released in 2-packs. That looks at the individual robots, the vehicle modes, the transformations between them, all that stuff. This is entirely just focused on the combine modes, so we are going to go straight from this to the transformations going into the combine mode bits, putting everything together, and then looking at the combiner proper. So if you want to see stuff on the individual, we're gonna do that for now. If you want to see the videos on the individual figures, then you can go back and check those out. So here we are. Here's the whole team. I'm just going to go by their G1 names, not their third-party names, because their third-party names are Mixer and I think it was Mixer and Loader, and then there's Tipper and Craner, and then Bulldozer and Excavator. But yeah, we're just going to go with the G1 names. Now, you may notice everyone except Longhaul is in their vehicle modes. That's because it's just kind of the easiest way to do it, for me at least. That being said, with Longhaul, it doesn't really matter because you're transforming his lower half like from robot mode, but his upper half is basically just going to stay in vehicle mode. So you could go from vehicle to like half robot, or from robot to half vehicle. It is what it is. So you may also notice that everyone's guns are separate, because a lot of these guys, you can't really just take the guns off. They're you have to like partially detransform things. So I just left the guns out for the sake of this. So we're just going to take the guns, put all of these off to the side for now, and we'll get back to that once we finish with the combiner. And you give me this. Thank you. Okay, let's do this. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Hook and Longhaul because they are the most complex. They're not bad, and I feel like what happens between these two is a little bit overblown in terms of people talking about how it's like super complicated or whatever, but it is the most involved out of everyone. We will start with Longhaul. Again, like the top half is basically just going back to vehicle mode, but there is a little bit more to it. But I want to also talk about what goes on with the legs too, because that's actually really cool and really clever. Longhaul's hips become Devastator's hips, but as you can see, they're kind of more proportioned for this smaller robot, which I said in the previous video for Longhaul, but I love this guy. He's my favorite of the set. What they did is really clever, because you do get these hips kind of pushed out more for the Devastator mode to be more proportional, but like the way they did it is so smart. So what you do is you click the hip out and then rotate it 180 degrees and then bring it back down. And then you can rotate the thigh, which for some reason it catches going this way, but it still goes all the way around. As you can see, it just, for whatever reason, catches right here in this direction. But there. So that orients the leg for the combine mode. And you can see that brings the hip way out, but it keeps all of that range and functionality. And that's just really, really clever, because what they did was they offset the ratchet in the hip there. So it's more on the outside here, but you don't notice it because of how everything's constructed. So like you don't notice it in the regular robot mode, but when you use that extension, it's so smart. It's simple but smart, and I just love it. And pretty much that's what I have to say about this set as an entire thing. It's just very simple and smart. So anyway, that is the hips done. Now for the rest of the legs, you want to unplug the wheels from back here. There are some tabs here, or a tab here that tabs in back here. So you want to unplug the wheels. Then you want to take this metal piece, fold this in, and this will tab in here. There's like these little tabs down here that go into this bit up here. So those plug in, and these will just stay as they are for the moment. Now you want to take this shin piece and shift it up, and I find it's easiest to kind of tilt it rather than pull, do it from the bottom. So you kind of pull out from the bottom, and that leverages it out. And then this can come up, and this will come up on like a double hinge. You can't really see it, but there's a double hinge inside here. This comes up, and then there's a, again, hard to show, but there's a slot right above that gray piece that will go over this kind of chunky tab on the thigh. So this shifts up, pegs into place, and with that pegged into place, now what you do is this piece swings around, and there's this tab on the outside of this metal piece that will tab in to the back of the thigh. And that will lock the thigh together, which also incidentally locks this rotating piece together. That gives Devastator his thighs, and it's really clever, and I love how that comes together. So again, just kind of shift this up from the bottom, and then bring it up, and here you can kind of see how this piece rotates freely until that wheel is locked. I'm going to bring this up, peg it into the thigh, and then this will swing in and tab into the back. And there we go. Now long haul looks like this, which is ridiculous, but this will work for Devastator. So now we're going to, I'm actually going to keep the arms up because we want to untab the chest plate, and it tabs in here and here on the inside. Just bring that up and unfold this. This whole thing will come down, and it'll come down all the way for now because we're going to want to rotate things in a minute, but bring that down. With that down, now this whole assembly, this green piece here and this piece here, it's all one piece. This will shift forward, but you also want to move these wheels out because they're these little purple bits that tab over the green piece. So bring that out, and now this can shift up and down, and that will tuck Longhaul's head away. This whole assembly can disconnect and just kind of flop for now. Going to swing this up and in, and these will just tab into the top here, but I'm not going to do that just yet because we also want to work on the forearms. So this little bit here untabs and swings in on either side, and that just, it cleans up the forearm and also allows them to bend backwards because this is the regular elbow. What you want to do is rotate the bicep so that you can bend the arm backwards like that. And when you bend it back, it's a little tricky to get into place, but essentially you just want to have this down and flush tabbed into this piece here, and then this can come down and find its place all plugged in here. And it's kind of, again, tricky to get it all lined up. Primarily it's just because there's like some junk on the inside. What it is there's this little assortment of, show it, there you go. There's this little assortment of tabs here that need to go into the underside here, and it's just tricky to line that up with how everything works. But you kind of, like, there's a little bit of plastic flex. It's not too bad, and also the plastic feels sturdy enough to take it. It's just a little bit, you know, I would prefer to not have to do that. But anyway, make sure that's still tapped in. And now these pieces will come down on a double hinge, and there is a little tab here that'll go into a little slot on the inside here, which again, difficult to show from this angle, but that goes in. That snapping sound was not the plastic snapping, it was just the stiffness of the joint here. But that can shift up and come down and in and tab in. There we go. And like this is basically just the vehicle mode. Now going to take this piece, and I think I need to untab the wheels because they're in the way. So we're going to take this piece, the entire front of the dump truck, and this entire assembly is going to rotate 180 degrees. With all that done, now the upper body can rotate 180 degrees. For the this piece down here, this uses a very particular kind of multi-hinge system. What you want to do is, it's going to be really like practically impossible to show from this angle, but there's kind of like some tabs on the sides of the pelvis piece here, and these little notches on the sides here. You want to line those up, and what you have to do is basically, like I find, to get a finger up in here. Nope, that's wrong. Okay. I'm going to push down so that this sits a little bit higher, and this will all line up pretty easily. That middle hinge is pretty stiff, so that's why you got to use the leverage. But you do that, flare these out, and that is Devastator's lower body entirely done. I love how this works because you still get actual, like, they're a little stumpy, but you get functional legs out of it. So that's long haul all taken care of for now. Now we can work on Hook, and Hook is the more complicated of everybody. So I'm going to get this out of the way, just kind of fold that down. I'm going to, kind of like we're going into robot mode, these black pieces, they tab into these metal bits here a little bit, but they also tab into the sides up here. So you kind of want to pull apart and out so that you can get these unhooked and swing them down. So again, pull out and down. Now we're going to take these bits apart, and these, they tab in up. So you want to pull down in order to free these, what were and are Hook's arms. So you want to pull down and then kind of swing out. This little panel here folds in, and this will come out like this, and this will just kind of stay out for now. Before I forget, come up here and take these little bits on the sides here that make Hook's chest, and those just fold in completely, and they will surround the head. Split this a little bit so that we get the space we need to pull this panel out, which is a little bit difficult to line up because things just like to crash in together, but it's nowhere near as bad as like Planet X's Grimlock. But this whole assembly comes out, and we'll just kind of leave it like that for now to get it out of the way. And same deal here. Fold this up and around. Now, going to accordion the legs out like so. They just kind of combiner wars from the side. Okay, there's a lot that needs to happen here. So you want to take the legs, and they will swing in like this. This assembly will swing in like this, and then this door will now fold in like that. And then this can just kind of freely swing like that. So you want to get it weirdly angled like that. Also the pelvis here can disconnect. It plugs in, and that swings down a bit. The bits up here, there are these little gray pieces on the side. Those fold out. And then there are these purple bits on the sides here. Those fold up. These panels fold up. And this will just fold. Basically, you want to get it as out of the way as possible. So trying to show it from here, you want to bring this up, bring this in, and just kind of fold it in as much as you can. Now with that done, this hip piece actually is on like a Studio Series concept Megatron style thing. So you can disconnect it, which can be a little tricky to do, but it disconnects and swings up on this extra, like there you can kind of see how it's in there, but that will swing out. And that is a very important thing. You don't want to use the hip to get this swung out, because you can see where the hip is now. Like the hip is up here now when you swing it out properly, as opposed to down here. If you just use the hip, it's not going to line up right for the combined mode. Disconnect, swing that up, and again, this swings in at a weird 90-degree angle, but it'll all make sense later. And this folds in over all of that. Now we can start doing the other stuff. So this will separate, much like with the robot mode. Now we can push here to pop the combiner head out, and this all just accordions up and then kind of comes back down and tabs into place. This will eventually get all shored up, but what we also need to do now is we can do the back. So just kind of push these out of the way so that you get enough clearance to rotate this around, and this will just kind of fold in. So rotate that around, and then this can come back up for now. It's just the angles involved with this piece, it kind of gets in the way of the rotation here. So that comes up. Now these pieces can come in, and these tabs on the sides of the forearms will go into these slots on the side here. So just bring that in and slot it in on both sides. This whole thing will still kind of flop around, and this whole thing will also flop around. But we kind of want to sort of get this into position by shifting these joints with the hip assembly and everything backwards. So you can kind of see how this is going. And also don't want to forget the pelvis piece needs to got tabbed back in accidentally. That you just want to have kind of sitting up like this. It was like this. You want to have it up like this so that it's out of the way. Now this is the trickiest part, is getting all of this together and shored up. There are these notches on top of long haul here. What's going to happen is these gray pieces here have like little openings on them. Those are going to slide inside the long haul grooves. So that's the first thing you want to do. I'm not going to have an easy time showing that on camera, so I'm just going to do it from here, but this will get in place, and you can actually kind of feel it line itself up. But you want to do that and then push this forward, and I find it's best to grip onto the bits of hook that are like, you don't want to push from a floppy bit. You want to grab like kind of the center mass and shift that forward as much as it'll go, and that locks the two parts together primarily. Now is when things get kind of tricky. So this can come down, and there are a bunch of interlocking tabs on this this shoulder piece here, and then this piece on long haul back here. And also while that's happening, the hook chest head section kind of shifts down and goes between long haul's forearms. So all of this will push together and is very snug, but it does push together. There we go. So I got it started, and now this just squunches together nice and tight. The silver panel up here folds down, and there is actually there are a couple of tabs on this black piece and a couple of notches right up here that go over those tabs, and that just kind of helps to lock this in place. And these green pieces here fold down. They don't tab into anything, they just fold down, but it helps to kind of clean things up a little bit. Now comes the trickiest part. Oh, also this can just kind of sit like that. It doesn't plug into anything, but it'll be fine. So the trickiest part of all of this is getting these sections into place, because there are these L-shaped tabs right here on this plank that the combiner head is on, and they need to go into these little channels on the insides of the legs here, and it is very oddly difficult to line up and kind of get situated. It's doable, and it doesn't ever feel like I'm going to break anything, but it's definitely the most arduous part of this whole thing, because it's a whole lot of like, this has to go underneath things and then slide around things, and it's just so weird to try and do. And I'm gonna try and do it from this angle, and it just doesn't. I've seen people on TFW say that something that helps is actually filing down these tabs up here, which I haven't done yet, but I've definitely thought about it, because this is the only part of the transformation that I'm just like, when it comes to doing it. Also, don't be afraid to pop this out of the way so that you get a little bit more leverage up here. So I'm going to try to get one side, and then hopefully be able to show you all more what I'm doing a little bit better with the other, but I can't make any promises because this is such a tricky thing to do. And it never feels quite right, but there we go. Okay. When you get it in place, this will be all like locked together, but you also want to look out for this. This should be level, kind of like, 90 degrees and all that. If it's up at a slight angle, it's not lined up right. Now let's see if maybe I can show this to you all on camera. I have no idea how well this is going to go, but we're going to try. So this just kind of goes up and over, and you also want to, it also may help to like brace this piece a little bit with your thumb, because you don't, again, you want that hip to not move. You want, it's just this gray piece, this dark gray piece that you want to be moving. So I'm bracing that with my thumb as I'm trying to line all of this up. So I'm going to shift this over and shove it in. Wow, that actually went much smoother than expected. There we go. And once again, things should be relatively flush on the front here, not like bowing up significantly or anything like that. So we should be good. This can come back down. To cap all of this off, there are the fists. Fists up here, there's actually an extra joint here that allows the fists to bend. And what you want to do is angle it in so that the fists can go over these pegs here. And it is a little awkward. It does require a little bit of flex, but again, the plastic's pretty sturdy. So I'm going to just do this one. There we go. So I got that in, and then I'm just going to kind of push this way to get it all plugged together. And see if I can show you all here. So we're going to fold this in, pull that out to try and... There we go. And then this can push in to shore everything up. And this piece comes up, and there are basically this just comes up and tabs into, there are these little green spots up here where the little black pieces for this piece tab in, and it's not super necessary for the for holding everything together in the combine mode, because at this point it's as locked together as it's going to be, but it gets these pieces out of the way. We should do the chest piece. So these wheels stay where they are. There's a little tab in here that comes out, and it's actually not that hard to get out, but it's this little piece here, and this will go up and hook into this little hole up here. So this comes up and around, and then this will kind of shift down and plug in. Oh, wasn't lined up right. So that shifts up and then plugs down into Hook's butt, basically. And that locks this together. And it can still like shift up to come undone, but it's not something that I think you're going to accidentally shift apart. And now these bits can untab and fold out. To actually finish this all off until we properly combine everything, this piece pops up. Just this outer shell piece. Whoops. Probably should have done this before attaching the fist. It's okay, this piece just pops off. It's not glued in. But anyway, this comes up. This piece accordions out, and it will shift down, and there's like a little tab down here that goes into a little slot down here. And this will just shift down to lock into place. This little bit here will fold in, and that allows this to fold back down over that combiner port. I'm going to tab this back in. And now it's kind of like, oh no, there's this ugly gap up here. They actually thought of that. This little panel here folds up. So this little panel here folds up and around and fills in that gap. That is so unnecessary, but also so clever. Okay, now mostly the same deal on this side. This piece comes up, and this one, okay, it may have just been this piece got knocked loose on the other side, but yeah, this is fine. There's enough clearance. This is not hitting this piece. So this comes up, this piece accordions out and down and shifts and tabs into place down here. This panel folds in, this comes back down and closes that off. And now we are completely done with the torso section until we start attaching things. So that is the combine mode, upper and lower body minus the limbs. Now let's do, well, we already did them before, so we're going to real quick go through Scrapper and Mixmaster. Their transformations into limb mode are very, very simple. So for Mixmaster, you want to take this entire mixing drum section, pop it up, and then this will rotate 180 degrees. Also, because he was in truck mode, this little scoop thing folds up just to get out of the way. So this comes up. These little canisters here will slide up this way. They untab from right here and slide out. So there you can kind of see that they slide up. They shift upwards. And then this rotates around and can kind of slide back down, and that will close that off. And so on this side, maybe show it from this angle. This pulls out and shifts out and then swings down and then can kind of push back in. I'm trying to orient it backwards. So this middle section rotates like this, and then this other section rotates around 180 degrees, and it does kind of get caught up on these green bits here, but you can kind of work past it. So you want it like this. The reason you want it like this is because this piece is going to be the elbow. So there's that. We do not have to do anything with the front of the truck. So to finish it off, the drum splits open up here, and inside is the fist that kind of accordions out. And this all comes back down, and this will collapse down onto here, and it kind of tabs in a couple of different spots, and it's weirdly sometimes tricky for me to get it lined up, but it does go eventually. So that comes down, then this shifts down, and there are these two little tabs here that will go into these two little slots here, and that plugs in, and then we can unfurl the fingers if you're into that sort of thing. Give that wrist a rotation so it's more properly oriented, and there is one arm. Scrapper is a very similar but not exactly the same deal. Again, we're not going to be doing anything with the front of the vehicle, but we are going to be doing a little bit of stuff with the back. So this canopy section pops up, this whole section pulls up and out. So those are the individual robot mode arms, but we just got to pull it up for now because what we want to do next is split this apart, and it also splits apart along here, these black sections. And this is all so you can fold out the hidden combined mode fist. So this folds out, and then this is also where you would remove the gun if it was still pegged in there, but I already had it out. And then this just comes back together and goes back exactly the way it was into vehicle mode. And this all folds in, this comes back down, this comes back down, and there we go. And now this can bend like this, and then this will rotate this way because this is his left arm as opposed to his right arm. And then again, unfurl the fingers and give the wrist a little rotation. And there is the other arm. So now for the legs. The legs are kind of like we already saw with Bone Crusher and Scavenger. Their transformations are not exactly identical, but they're practically identical. I'm going to do my best here. I've only transformed these guys into limb mode once. I did not do a practice run before this video, so hopefully I can remember how it all works. So we will start with Scavenger. I want to take the crane arm and rotate it 180 degrees, and then this will fold backwards like this. And we'll just kind of have this like that for now. I'm going to take this and pop it up, because I always want to make sure that this is not connected to anything, because it is very easy to forget to disconnect this, and it usually pops out on its own when stuff happens, but I would rather not risk breaking it. This panel can now kind of pop out, and you kind of have to shift it up past this black piece on the tread here, but it's fine, and I figured out during the individual robot mode video that it's just easier to do this to get all of this going. Now we can disconnect these silver bits that are tabbed in up here, disconnect what are the toes for the individual robot modes. Now, going to rotate the hips. We're going to need to shift just for the room, but this rotates around 180 degrees. So again, on this side, kind of bring this down a bit, and then use this double hinge on the hip here to shift it down so that we get more clearance, and bring this up the rest of the way. And also, just because I'm going to move these out of the way so that there's a little bit more clearance. Now I'm going to take this silver panel, pull this up, get that out of the way. These will stay like this for now. Here is where things start to get interesting. So we're going to disconnect these bits, swing them out. And as we swing them out, there's this secondary bit here that actually, there we go, that actually slides up. And then with that slid up, now this can come out the rest of the way like this. So show it over here, pop this out, shift this up, and then swing that around. And also, now that these are rotated 180 degrees, we can use that double hinge to shift the hips back out again for now. And the pelvis section will actually disconnect and fold down. Unplug the arms, bring them out. This piece comes up and forward, and it should, we get this out of the way a little bit, this should tab into place. I want to make sure that head doesn't get squunched up in there. So this will kind of shift forward and tab into the kind of midsection there. Yeah, okay, there's enough space. And this just kind of sits like that. This piece, it shifts back down, but instead of this coming up to make the robot chest, it actually kind of shifts down like this. And this will come down, and there is a tab on the side of the waist here that will tab into the underside here. So this comes down and tabs in like that. And it looks like that from the front. So this is not going to do, it's not going to do this because that's for robot mode. It is instead going to shift back, come down, and do this. Okay. The upper body is tricky, if I remember correctly. So there's this panel here that didn't really lock in robot mode. You want to fold that out, and then you also fold this silver piece out like that. And this will become the inside of, like, this is part of the locking mechanism. So this is kind of how it was oriented, a little more like this for vehicle mode. It comes down, rotates, and then swings down. This all unfolds, and now this will swing back in, and this tab here will go into a slot right here. But we're not going to do that yet because that is part of getting all of this together for the combined mode. So instead, we're just going to leave this kind of angled like this. And same deal here on this side. This comes out, fold out this piece, and then rotate this and bring it down and kind of get it in place, but not in place, if that makes any sense. Last thing to do is just get the toes situated. So I'm going to get this little panel that's silly and superfluous out of the way, get this folded back down again. The entire waist will rotate 180 degrees. And now these are the knees. They will bend all the way around, and this chunky tab here, this chunky tab right here, will plug into the back of the calf. And that will tab together on that side, and on this side too. You want to bring this up, and then tab that in. And now these will kind of hinge back a little bit, but not all the way, and these obvious pegs on either side of the pelvis section will go into these somewhat large peg holes on the insides of the legs. So I'm not entirely sure how well this is going to show up, but that just plugs in like that. And then on this side, it's the same deal. So I'm going to shift this down and plug it in. And then as that plugs in, we can take the toes and get those lined up and smoosh them together. And this can kind of sit back a little bit. It's not going to go back all the way, but and then this comes down. And this piece accidentally got tabbed back in, but yeah, that can tab back in now. And there we go. There is one leg, and Bone Crusher's is pretty much exactly the same. Okay, so for Bone Crusher, I'm going to fold this little smokestack down, pop this up. My apologies if I go really fast with this one, but it's practically the same. You want to separate out these bits, bring these shovel pieces down. Like with Scavenger, you want to kind of take these pieces here and pull them out and up to get them out of the way, which is a little trickier on Bone Crusher because of the way he comes together. And with all that out of the way, this untabs. We also unplug from here, swing the feet out so that there's more clearance. The legs will rotate and kind of shift and rotate. Actually, no. I think for Bone Crusher specifically, we're gonna do 90 degrees because these bits need to kind of swing around to the other side a little bit, and it'll just be easier without all this junk in the way. So do that. Bring this out. Swing this up and tab it into place going this way. This will kind of go back into place. This piece now can rotate around 180 degrees, and it'll still be able to go up a bit, so that's good. But that comes around. These arm pieces, it's exactly the same as with Scavenger, so this comes out, and then this all just comes back in, rotates, and can just kind of get in the general spot that it needs to be before going into the proper, like before being attached to the combined modes. There we have that. Going to fold down Bone Crusher's pelvis. This can come up the rest of the way. And again, just like Scavenger, these pieces come up, and as they come up, this piece shifts up, and then this comes around the rest of the way. Again, untab, bring that up, swing it around, and now all of this happens. So I am wrong. I did a wrong. These pieces actually do stay on this side. I was not thinking clearly, so just gonna shift this around and back up. Shove these down to where they were for the robot mode, for his knees, and bring these back up. Okay, now we're in position. These bits fold around just like on Scavenger and plug in, and this just kind of will sit back around the, I guess, the back of the heel, like that. Bend this in and around, and tab in to itself, and then this can kind of fold around. And then again, just like with Scavenger, the pelvis piece comes down and will tab into the sides of the legs as these kind of come up and shift in. And as that pinches in, this stuff comes together. And of course, forgot to do this before, but you want to rotate the waist 180 degrees, which thankfully you can do when all of this is the way it is. And then lastly, again, these pieces shift in, come down, and tab into the midsection. On this side, shift in, swing down, and kind of tab into the midsection. And there we go. There is another leg all done. In terms of side, I'm not entirely sure which side is correct for Bone Crusher and Scavenger because they're not really, like, there's no real difference between them. Either foot can be either foot, but what I've kind of decided to do, for now at least, is I'm going to have Bone Crusher and Mixmaster on one side and Scrapper and Scavenger on the other, because that is kind of how it goes with Devastator. But just know that you can swap these around if you want. There's no reason you can't. I'm probably doing it backwards with these guys, but again, they're the same, really. So to connect the legs, it's pretty clever, but also there's just a lot of locking points. So what you want to do is take the foot and just kind of fold that back temporarily. This entire green piece here shifts and rotates 90 degrees. And this will come back down. But first, I'm going to take this, and you can notice there's this kind of eye-shaped piece here, and there's a similar shaped slot on the inside of either one of these guys. So this slides together. That's all that is. So I'm going to fold this out of the way so I've got more leverage. So that folds in. The foot can come back down. And now all of this comes in and tabs together. And essentially what's going to happen is this front peg pegs into this panel here. This back peg is going to peg into the side of the leg here. And then this peg on Longhaul's foot is going to peg into this peg on the inside of what was Scavenger's elbow, or Bone Crusher's elbow, whichever one you're doing. So that all, again, slides together. And this comes down and pegs in, which is a little bit on the tricky side to do when you're not actually looking at it. There we go. And this pegs in back here, and then there's also that slot and tab that I talked about back here. This slot down here and tab here that go together to kind of lock everything in. The other side is the same deal. This all comes in and pegs in and is really solid. It's just a matter of getting it lined up initially. That is a little bit tricky, again, when you're doing it on camera at a very awkward angle, but get all that tabbed in and pegged in, and this tabs in down here. Woo! That was the hips. It's fine. The last thing to do is to swing this piece up, and this will just kind of tab in. Like there's a tab here that tabs in up here. So this all comes together and really, really locks it all in place. So this leg is not coming off until you want it to come off. And then again, same deal with Bone Crusher. So there is the lower body all done. And now we can work on the upper body. Or not even the upper body, just the arms. All right, camera adjusted, and my face is more in camera. Hi. I don't hide my face. I'm just usually not in front of the camera unless it's like for specific videos. To attach the arms, super duper simple. There are these kind of T-shaped tabs on the outside, on either side from those bits that we brought out before. And these little grooves on the insides of Scrapper and Mixmaster, they just slide over. That's all there is to it, though it might be easier to bring that out a click. So this will slide into place. There we go. And then I'm just bracing here because I don't want to like have the legs go wah, but slide that down, and it's very snug. So that's one arm attached, other arm, exact same deal. And again, I'm just gonna bring that out a click. And this will slide down and into place, nice and solid. And there we go. Not that it makes that much of a difference, but I've tried to get the microphone just out of frame. But here we have Mecha Invasion's Devastator, and this thing, I mean, look at this thing. I love this. It's really enjoyable, for me at least, to put all of this together. I think it looks great, like amazing. And you don't even really clock the fact that he's wrong in terms of where the limbs are and stuff like that. Not initially. You're gonna notice that, you know, he's got symmetrical feet, more or less. You know, he doesn't have the bucket here and the truck cab here. But at the same time, it doesn't really... It's not as noticeable as you'd think, because you're kind of focused up here and up here, while the arms are definitely wrong and stuff. It's still got the asymmetrical thing going, and Scrapper's bucket, like, upon first glance at least, this doesn't necessarily look like it's not Bone Crusher. It's not. If you look at it for more than 2 seconds, it's clearly not, but you have a bucket up here, which is very much like the bucket on, or scoop, or whatever it's called on Bone Crusher. And so I feel like that kind of helps to tie the look together anyway. And again, the transformation is actually very straightforward. Hook and long haul, Hook in particular, yes, they are a bit finicky to get all of that done, but it's not anywhere near as bad as I've seen some people make it out to be. I mean, I understand some people might have difficulty with it. I get that. And they're not wrong for having difficulty with it. I just mean that it's not some kind of inconceivable nightmare that a lot of people seem to talk about it like it is, because it's really not. This is solid. This is a solid combiner connection. Everything is on here very tight. There are so many locking tabs and pegs and stuff on the legs and like the torso. Like I can do this and he's not gonna fall apart. Like the arms may slide off if I'm not careful, but even the arm connection is pretty darn snug. Like this didn't actually shift when I was doing that at all, I don't think. No. So like I can lift him up by his arms and the connectors aren't coming out. The legs aren't coming off. The torso's not coming apart. It is so solid, and I would argue in some cases maybe a little too solid. I don't think Hook and long haul needed quite as many connectors as they do. And again, the slider sections up here are particular sticking points. I've heard that if you file down the edges a little bit, that makes it so much easier, and I may try that later, but it worked out okay this time, so I'm fine with it. This looks incredible, absolutely incredible. It's such a cool Devastator, and I love that it's all integrated. It is all one thing, except for the weapons. Okay, this is going to be interesting. So, it's not difficult to do the weapons, you just need to know there's like a specific order that I've found works best. So you want to take Mixmaster and Scrapper's weapons. Scrapper's gun, you fold the little bits down like you're going into the, tucking it away for vehicle mode or whatever. Now, there is this slot on the underside of Scrapper's gun, and there's this tab on the top, or back rather, of Mixmaster's gun. What you want to do is line it up so that the peg for Mixmaster's gun is going towards like the front of Scrapper's gun, and this will just peg together like this, with Scrapper's handle going along the top of Mixmaster's gun and Mixmaster's handle going along the bottom of Scrapper's gun. There are these little tabs on the top of Scrapper's gun that will actually go into these little grooves on Mixmaster's guns, so push them together like that. And this will go off to the side for now because it's way easier to attach the two halves of the gun after you've put it all together. Basically what you want is the guns for Bone Crusher and Scavenger. There are these little like slots on the backs here that go into these little tabs on the underside of Mixmaster's gun like this. But you can't really get that in place while getting everything else lined up. So what's easiest to do is just, again, leave this off to the side. There are these little slots on the magazine clip, which I don't know how well that's going to come across, but there are these little slots on either side of the magazine clip for Long Haul's gun. And there are these little slots on the underside and these silver bits for both Scrapper or Scavenger and Bone Crusher's gun, so it'll kind of tab in like that. Then for Hook's gun, you want to fold the handle in, and then this can kind of push back in a little bit. And there's a tab underneath the barrels for both Scavenger and Bone Crusher's guns. They'll go into the slot on the tip of the barrel for Hook's gun. And I think this is up for the combined mode gun, but you could probably do it that way too. I just think having this little silver bit at the top makes the most sense, but this will tab together, and then we take the other gun, and this will kind of tab over all that with like this slot going in here, or this tab rather going in here, this tab going in here. The handles, they have like opposing peg spots, so they'll like peg together, peg around each other with no problem. So bring this in and together, line it all up, and tab it all in, nice and secure. And now we can take Mixmaster and Scrapper's guns, and these tabs will go into these slots here, but then there are also these little pegs up here, which are probably not coming through on camera, but these little pegs on Mixmaster's gun that'll go into the barrels for Long Haul's gun. So you get all that lined up and pegged together, and now the gun is nice and secure, and that is the combined mode gun for Devastator. If you wanted to, you can like extend the barrel, you can flip this around if you wanted to, like you could attach it so that this piece was on top, but I just prefer to do it with this piece up there because I think that makes the most sense, but that's just me. But yeah, combined mode gun. And this goes in the hand like you would expect. You just kind of get this out of the way, and there is big old groove in the palm, and that's where oddly the barrel for Mixmaster's gun goes. And that will just peg in if I can get it lined up when I'm not looking at anything. There we go. That pegs in. Then the fingers can curl around, thumb can curl around. And now he's holding his big old blaster. There we have the full Mecha Invasion Devastator. And again, this thing is amazing. I love all of this. The color balance, I think, is actually pretty on point. Like, you've got primarily green and purple. Granted, you don't have like the purple down around where Mixmaster normally is, but depending on what version of Devastator you're looking at, that's accurate, so it is whatever. But this isn't trying to be a super accurate Devastator, which I love it for. And yeah, I just think this is a really cool design. I still wish that they had mixed things up a little bit and maybe had Hook become the lower body and Long Haul become the upper body. That way all of them would be swapped around, but it is what it is. Another thing you may notice about this guy, if I rotate him around, is that the back is actually really clean. Like, he's got the crane arm back here, but that's kind of normal for a Devastator, and it's got functionality, which we'll go over in a little bit. So yeah, that's really clean for what he does as well. I am enamored with this guy, but like, it's also like the fact that he's got so many, not bits, but like there's so much interesting color and deco work on this guy with like some integrated silver and even like gold in the chest plates. I also really like that you can see the wheels, the tires up in here. You've got a lot of really nice detail that you saw for like the different vehicles in all the different sections here, the extra detailing in the thighs, like you've got that silver and gunmetal in there. It's such a nice color breakup. It's still that identifiable green and purple combination, and he's still very much obviously made out of construction vehicles, just they're in different spots, but I love this. Now the head is very Devastator. It's painted well, looks good. I like it quite a bit, and it does do, I'm gonna bring out the cat butt magnet for one more round. It does do the thing. If I can get there we go. It does light up. It's not that easy to see from that angle, but it does light up, and it's so good. It's so good. I just love it. It even does the Unite Warriors thing where you can pop the forehead open, and then it's a little different because the glasses are attached to the forehead piece, but like you can flip out glasses and give him his little visor, and you can still do the eyes lighting up through it, and I love that. I prefer to have the visor down. I think this is the best look for this figure, in my opinion, but you know, to each their own. But one thing I'm uncertain of is I don't know if it's a good idea to leave the visor down if you're going back into Hook's robot mode or vehicle mode. It may be okay, but I'm a little too nervous to test that. So whenever I transform this back into either Hook's robot mode or vehicle mode, I always just pop this open and flip the visor back in and close it back up, because I just I don't want to risk anything going wrong. So I don't want to risk it. Also, something I just noticed, when you fold this in, don't fold it in all the way, because if you fold it in all the way, it'll kind of get stuck. I'm going to leave it out. He doesn't come with any alternate face plates. At least there was no alternate face in the boxes that I got, which is fine. I think he looks serious and severe enough, so it's not a problem, but it's something worth mentioning. But I think that this looks really good, and I really, really, really like the whole thing. Now for articulation, it's pretty darn good. The head is on a ball joint, so you get some pretty expressive tilt. You don't really get any down, but you get some decent up. However, you can use the transformation joints and doors to get a little bit extra range. So like you can disconnect this plate back here to have him look up more. Of course, if you go too far, it starts to look wild, but you can still, disconnect that for a little bit more up. And for down, you can disconnect the green piece and swing that to have him look down. But of course, it starts to look weird if you tilt it up too far. But like, you can still get a pretty decent amount of downward look without breaking up the sculpt too much. And like, it's easy to knock it back down if you touch it, but there's enough friction there, at least right now, that like it stays in place. So you can kind of work around that. The shoulders do the full 360. Okay, so it is ratcheted. They do 360, but then you've got things getting in the way, like the chest plate, but like this can kind of fold out of the way, so you don't have to worry too much about that. The back does get in the way, though. It's kind of crashing back here. However, this kind of ties into the outward motion, because you got straight down, out one click, out two clicks, and then that's kind of where it stops. But because of how both Scrapper and Mixmaster come together, you can actually disconnect and like click out the legs to get more outward motion. Essentially, you could think of it as almost like a shoulder pauldron that gets out of the way. It does break up the sculpt a bit, but the motion is there. And similarly, in order to get the arms to go around a full 360, you are probably going to have to disconnect this section up here, but once you do, it can go around all the way, no problem. As you saw, both during the initial videos for Scrapper and Mixmaster, and now they have bicep rotation. Depending on which guy you're looking at, you may also get a little bit more, because Scrapper, you just have the rotation up here. Mixmaster, you have the rotation up here and down here, but this is limited a bit because of the stuff crashing in here. So you probably aren't going to use this much for rotation, but you still get the bicep rotation up there. And then of course there is the elbow, which can bend to 90 on either figure, either arm. It's rotated back one, that's why it doesn't look like 90, but there, you got 90 degrees. And then you also have the wrist motion, which for Mixmaster, you get the rotation. For Scrapper, it's a rotation, but you also get up and down movement because of the joint that this uses for transformation. So it can lead to some like downward droop of the gun if you're not paying attention, but like I feel like that could be good for like melee weapon stuff, but you still get that rotation too. And then the fingers are just loaded with articulation. We saw this with the individual Mixmaster and Scrapper videos, but you've got the ball joint at the base so the thumb can rotate. It can also move in and out. You have a hinge also, so the thumb can hinge out as well, and then you also have the knuckle. So plenty of posability on the thumb, and then all the fingers have multiple hinges, so you can hinge in, and hinge in. So you got three joints on each finger, and they also, yep, they do, because they're ball joints at the base, so the fingers can also spread out a little bit or come together, but they can splay just a touch, which is good. And then if you wanted to, you could like rotate the fingers, which is weird, but he's a robot. You get a waist rotation that I believe can go all the way around. What's happening here is the midsection for long haul is kind of crashing into the front piece here, but it can still go all the way around. It's just going to push this out of place a little bit, but it's not like pegged in super securely, so it's fine. You can peg it back in, no problem. The hip skirts can rotate, and they can also move forward, so you've got ways to kind of get all this out of the way. And the hips they're long haul hips, so they can do long haul hip things. They can go forward to a little bit past 90, though the ratchets are not strong enough to hold the leg weight up, but they're strong ratchets. It's just, that's a decent amount of weight for them. Back to only about that far because of the wheels, but I think if you wanted to, you could get the wheel kind of out of the way, yeah, and bring it back more. Though that does sacrifice the stability of the thigh plate. Thigh rotation, which is a bit hampered because, again, of like all the geometry up here and the wheels back here. But if you get the wheel out of the way, you can rotate a bit more. And also if you bring the hip out, you can get more rotation. Speaking of which, the hips can go out. We can go out to 90. And again, the ratchet is plenty strong. It's not like, it's not a problem. It's just that this is a heavy leg. You also get a knee, which bends to not quite 90, but if we get this out of the way, it should be able to bend more. So you get at least one more click. So it's still not quite 90 without the tire in place, but it's a decent knee bend. And now the ankles. The ankle motion is exactly the same on Bone Crusher and Scavenger. You've got tilt in both directions. You don't really get any forward and backward motion. You can kind of approximate it a little bit with just a little bit of give in the joint, but like it's not really meant to go forward and back. But you do get rotation because of the fact that it's the waist joint. So you can actually get some pretty decent like outward motion on the ankle rotation, which I think that helps to make up for the fact that the thighs can't rotate super far with the wheels in place and the legs only out like a click. So yeah, lots of pretty decent posability on this guy. You don't get an ab crunch, but I can't really be bothered by the lack of an ab crunch because 1, combiner, and 2, like quite inexpensive combiner. Now for the crane arm, it does the same stuff that Hook did. So like you can swing this around if you wanted to and have it going in front of his face. You can do the thing where there's this piece in here. So this piece comes down and kind of double hinges up, and then this tab goes into, or peg goes into this hole here, and this becomes like a cannon. But then there's also this blue piece here that can flip out and become like a scope for Devastator, so you can do like an over-the-shoulder cannon, which is super cool. I'm tucking it away for now, but I like that you've got that option. Now, size-wise, move him over here. He is a combiner, so he is quite big. Here he is with our usual lineup. So you can see how he scales with a modern Voyager-ish, modern Deluxe-ish, and he's big. He's a combiner. The individual figures were quite big, so stands to reason. But then, of course, we've got to bring in some other combiners, some other Devastators to compare him to. So here he is with New Age's version, and this is a Legends scale, so obviously it's going to be smaller. It's a little rickety on this glass surface, but here he is with the Jinbao oversized version of Generation Toys Gravity Builder, which I want to stress again and reiterate, this is the oversized version, so I believe this is probably closer to the size of the actual Gravity Builder set, but I don't have the actual Gravity Builder set, I have this one. So here's where he is, here's how he stacks up to the oversized one, and it's basically the same as the oversized Jinbao knockoff, but here is Unite Warriors, not Combiner Wars, Unite Warriors, but it's the same, the dimensions are the same, but yeah, Unite Warriors Devastator with the Mecha Invasion version, and Unite Warriors definitely bigger than this guy. I don't know if you're going to hear some kind of rumbling in the background with this microphone, but in case you do, our POS neighbor who moved in or got a parking spot a few months ago has a very loud car engine that he likes to start up and then just idle for about 10 minutes or so right underneath our kitchen window, and we're on the ground floor. So we get car exhaust fumes coming in addition to the noise, which is super fun. I figure since we're looking at this really cool combiner, why not go all out? So I'm going to bring out all my other combiners, starting with the Yes Model oversized knockoff of Make Toys Guardia, who needs a dusting. Here he is with Legacy Motormaster, and I do think it is important to note that this Motormaster is taller than the regular Legacy Motormaster normally is, because he has the DNA upgrade kit. I'm just pointing that out because I don't know how obvious that may be to folks who aren't familiar, but yes, this has the DNA upgrades, so he's got longer thighs and basically platform shoes on. So he is taller than Legacy Motormaster normally would be, but here's how the two of them stack up. Here he is with my son, my monster son, Unique Toys Orden. But yes, here he is with Orden, and he is a little bit taller than Orden. And finally with the big guy, even though he is not the biggest guy in my collection, Mastermind Creations Feral Rex. Makes me so happy, but I'm getting off track. So yeah, here is Mecha Invasion's Devastator with Mastermind Creations Feral Rex. I did say I would compare him with every combiner I own, so here he is with Beast Wars Tripredicus, just in case anyone was curious. And that's it for all of my combiners that I own at this point. So here he is with the Duck Tank. And finally, that has been Mecha Invasion's, whatever this guy's called, their Devastator, and this thing is, as I said, so cool. Makes me so happy. It is definitely a little rough in a couple of spots. Some of the articulation is a little hampered in combine mode, but articulation for combiners tends to get hampered, you know? Really, the biggest disappointment in terms of the combine mode articulation is just the thigh rotations for me. And like the arms are a little bit bulky, so certain poses may be a little tricky, but you can mostly work around most of those restrictions. The individual robots are fun to mess with, the combined mode is fun to mess with, transforming them back and forth into all of the different modes is fun for me, and I love the look, and I love that they tried to do something a little different with this. And like I said, again, I do wish they pushed that difference a little bit further, but hey, it's different enough. Not only is it cool, it's weirdly affordable for what it is. That's not saying it's something people are going to be able to like run out and buy immediately, because I get like $90 per pair of figures is still a lot to ask. You're looking at what, like $270 all total once for the whole set. But in the context of third-party combiners, especially ones that are, he's not the biggest, obviously, but like he's still pretty big and chunky. Like, that's under $300 for something like this. It is wild. And again, that basically breaks down to $45 a figure, which is, for what this is, for how big they are, for how sturdy they feel and all that, that's really cool. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. I think I'm tapped out. So, there is Mecha Invasion's Devastator, whatever this combined mode is called. If this is something that interests you, I highly recommend looking into getting your hands on it. There are a couple of sites that you could probably find it on, or might be able to find it on in the future. I know ShowZ, I got all of mine from ShowZ, just spaced out over the course of several months. They're kind of my go-to for overseas stuff now, but ShowZ has, I think they have Bone Crusher and Scavenger in stock as of this recording, and I believe the other two sets are getting a reissue down the line that they have pre-orders open for. There are some places. So I'd say look around. $90 for 2 is a fantastic price. So that's all I got to say. You all feel free to let me know what you think of this set, the full combiner, the full team, whatever. As always, feel free to chime in down below. I enjoy hearing from you all. And again, thank you for watching. And I'll be talking about toys in whatever the next video ends up being. I don't know what that is right now. Got no plans.